So my friend Steve has the most incredible knack for getting into these awful situations, dragging me into them, and then charming his way out. And one of his favourite things to do is to pretend to have epileptic fits in shops and force me to steal yogurts, which he finds really funny and everything. And on this particular night, we were coming here to Flannerys late at night, when we were only in the door when he turned and he said, "Tom, I have the best idea ever." And I could see from the look in his eyes it was the worst idea ever. And he said, "Girls love like vulnerability and stuff, so why don't we pretend that I'm deaf to try and score a girl?" And I argued against it, but he persuaded me, so eventually we went up and he began to do sign language and I had to translate for him. So he'd do stuff like, and I'd say, "Oh, I like to go jiggy jiggy on the dance floor, sometimes surf as well." And then, but this went on and we were actually charming them fairly well. When I was getting tired of it, so I mistranslated for Steve. He kind of said like, and I mistranslated, "I can see your chest," just to try and end it. And Steve was annoyed about this and we were walking away and he said, "Tom, you ruined that, but luckily I have an even better idea, because if being deaf is pretty helpful, then the step up, if we pretend I'm blind, we can definitely get with a girl." So I said, "Steve, this is a terrible," and he said, "No, we're going with it, you owe me." So he closed his eyes and I said, "Steve, blind people don't close their eyes." And he said, "Quick, lead me to a girl." So I led him over to these two girls and they looked really nice girls, they looked kind of country-ish, I won't lie. And we went up to them and I said, which is the most embarrassing line ever, I was like, "My friend Stephen here, he was blinded in a horrible waxworks accident, hence his sealed eyes. And he really wants to just see a pretty girl's face by touching it. Would it be all right if he touched your face?" And so they agreed, and he sat down and he began to touch her face, and I began to talk to the other girl. And we were at that for about 25 minutes when I look across, and Steve still hasn't opened his eyes, but he's scoring the girl in the corner, and he's kind of vaguely nudging into her before he starts properly. And so I'm thinking things are going pretty well with the girl I'm talking to, so maybe I should try and move in there. But suddenly Steve starts tugging at my shoulder, and he's like, Tom, you have to lead me to the bathroom." So I was like, "Okay, Christ." So I lead him up anyway, and just when we get over there to outside the door, he suddenly opens his eyes and he goes, "Tom, what do those girls look like?" And I was like, "Your one's not the best, but mine is pretty cute, so if you could keep it going like a little bit longer, that would be great." So I went to the bar and he went to the handicapped toilets, and I was there at the bar when the two girls came up to me and they said, "Oh my God, we can't believe your friend, And I was like, "Oh, I know, yeah, he's really blind. And like, we feel so bad because we thought he was joking. But you're just such a great person for bringing him out like this." And I suddenly felt terrible because it's rare enough you meet people so trusting in a city especially, and I suddenly realized I really liked this girl, and so I was trying to think of a way out of this when suddenly I see Steve coming out of the toilet. He walks right up to us and just looks around and goes, "Tom, who are these girls?" And they went ballistic. They called us the saddest bastards they'd ever met, and various other things. But anyway, eventually it kind of died down a bit. We went inside, we're sitting over here when we noticed Steve suddenly tugged at my shoulder. He's like, "Look." So I looked up and they were talking to two humongous men, the two girls, like giant with big knobbled ears and necks as wide as my own waist pretty much, and big black coats. And the two guys were giving looks in our direction suddenly. And they begin to motion to come over to us. And Steve suddenly was like, Steve just, without saying anything, puts his arm forward and slips a glass up his sleeve. And I was like, "Steve, I don't want to fight them. This isn't..." And Steve suddenly flips at me. He's like, "God, Tom, I didn't realize I invited Nelson Mandela out with me tonight. Where's your wife, Nelson, and what's under your patio?" And I was like, "That's mean." And I said, I never expected to have to say this. I said, "I'm not Nelson Mandela." And so anyway, but I realized they started walking towards us, and so I decided to adopt my own tactics of survival, which is kind of the opposite of a transformer. It's kind of transforming down. So I kind of tried to look as weak as possible, just slendering my shoulders and kind of hanging my face and looking a bit innocent. And if I had glasses, I would have put them on, but I didn't have any. And just hoping, because it's based on the logic that if you're the weakest, smallest person in the room, no one can really beat you up, because then they're a dick. But as they were walking towards me, I thought, oh my God, I've just pretended that my friend was blind to try and score a girl, so maybe I've stepped outside this moral code whereby I won't be beaten up. Maybe I'll never be let back in. And as they were walking, suddenly I turned around and Steve was gone. And I didn't know what to do. And suddenly, just as they were coming, I hear Steve yelling from across the room. I look across, and in the 40 seconds it's taken them to walk towards us, Steve's managed to befriend the other two huge men in the bar, these South Africans who were there, and he manages to charm them, and they wanted to be his friend. And so I slipped over and started chatting to him. And then the other huge guys didn't know what to do, because they wanted to beat up Steve, but they also wanted to buy him a drink. Eventually we got away scot-free after Steve had once again charmed his way out.